If my dog barks one more time, I am about to cook it for 70 grams of protein! It's been a while since I talked about Jujutsu Kaisen, but with the sequel/spinoff releasing, along with seeing a debate pop up here and there regarding my GOAT Yuji Itadori being special grade, today I wanted to look at the main character of Jujutsu Kaisen and see how powerful he actually was throughout the entire series. Today, we will not only be answering questions like, is Yuji special grade level? But we will also be breaking down his stats and where he scales not only throughout his series, but also across anime itself. Though, I'm gonna let y'all know right now, I am not going to be sitting here and going, in chapter 1, he moves faster than a car. In chapter 2, he moves faster than Megumi. That's a lot of unnecessary yapping, and if you're a regular on the channel, you know that I like to not waste time. So I'm going to be giving a brief summary of Yuji Itadori for those of you who aren't really all that aware of Jujutsu Kaisen. Yuji Itadori is a 15-year-old boy who sadly had to witness his grandpa, who is his only caretaker, pass away. Before dying, he'd tell Yuji to not end up like him, and before he goes, he should die being surrounded by others. After this point, he'd go on to save his friends from a freaky curse that they accidentally attracted. And after learning that this finger that attracted these curses has a chance of him giving him the strength to save his friends, he gambles restlessly. Oh wait, say that again? And he ends up being the vessel of the strongest being in the verse. Yeah, you see, because of this gamble, Yuji now put himself in a position where he either dies right here and now, or consumes all of Sukuna's fingers and then dies. This leads into Yuji, of course, becoming a Jujutsu Sorcerer and learning the basics of cursed energy. We see early on that Itadori himself possesses incredible physical strength and rapid growth during battle. In the short time span he was a sorcerer, he somehow ended up being comparable to a top tier grade 1 sorcerer like Nanami, and he could even fight disaster curses like Mahito. Someone who definitely should be far greater than the initial finger bearer that Yuji previously struggled with, and had to rely on Sukuna to even get past. And even if you don't believe the Yuji that fought Mahito could beat that finger bearer, the one by the Goodwill arc most certainly can. Even before encountering Todo, who would help him exponentially grow as a sorcerer, Megumi states that Yuji, in terms of pure physicality, would come out on top in a brawl between anyone in Goodwill at the time. This is impressive as Maki is pretty much the most physically dominant sorcerer we see in Tokyo High, and that's kind of her whole thing. Megumi also had brawled with Todo earlier, who may be even stronger than Maki physically. And like I said, he would meet Todo, who would help him grow exponentially as a sorcerer, going from below Todo when he's using cursed energy by a decent margin to now kind of fighting on par with him. And not only during this fight, but also when the other students try jumping him, we see how adaptive Yuji is not only in combat, but also to the environment and his surroundings. And by the climax of the Goodwill fight, we would see Hanami, who, mind you, was giving Megumi, Maki, and all of the other students a lot of trouble, now struggling with the likes of Yuji and Todo even in a one-on-one setting. Which goes to show you how ridiculous Yuji's potential is. And thanks to Todo, he'd learned to awaken what is basically the flow state technique in Jujutsu Kaisen, also known as Black Flash. You see, with this technique, Yuji can pretty much increase his power exponentially for a moment, allowing him to take down much bigger foes than himself. The first victim of this, of course, was Hanami, who got hit with 5 consecutive Black Flashes in a row, which at the time was the highest record of using that move consecutively. And even when comparing Base Yuji's raw strength and speed, we know characters like Maki are not only catching bullets at point blank ranges, but we also see weaker characters like Mechamaru who can generate blasts that are much more than enough energy to wipe out entire city blocks. And of course, Yuji would then go on to beat up Choso's brothers, who are portrayed to be above the same finger bearer that was taking on Megumi, who, mind you, is also the same guy that was able to harm Hanami, which is consistency to show that Yuji not only got exponentially stronger between the beginning and the end of Goodwill, but it does give you a nice comparison to where he was at the beginning of the series, as like I referenced before, he couldn't even beat the initial finger bearer, and is now fighting characters who are much stronger than the same finger bearer that Yuji was struggling with. So by the end of season 1, Yuji is a combatant that should be more than capable of moving at those subsonic to transonic ranges, and the reason I think Yuji's speed here is a little lower than you'd expect is purely because of what happens in Shibuya. Before we get into that though, it should be noted that Todo does state Jujutsu Sorcerers naturally grow with battles, regardless of the outcome. The reason this is important is that throughout most of the series, at least, Yuji does typically grow through either during or after a fight. Or at least the important ones. I don't think Yuji is getting exponentially stronger fighting some like demented grasshopper or something. But we do see this with the likes of Mahito and Hanami, where even though he lost those encounters or was inferior to his opponent technically, he still grew a lot stronger because of it, and obviously Todo is the prime example of this. And of course, during Shibuya, we see Yuji pop off. Itadori going into that arc is stated base to base to be equal to Nanami in AP at the start of Shibuya. And mind you, Nanami throughout the entire Shibuya arc is in overtime. And before you guys go, oh, well, that doesn't make sense. Why would Nanami at full power be equal to base Yuji? Well, I mean, it's not like Yuji and Nanami weren't all that far apart beforehand when Yuji was enraged in the first arc. And I just emphasized how much stronger Yuji got. So I don't think it's actually ridiculous to say that Yuji's base strength is relative with Nanami in overtime, which is pretty crazy considering he could put chunks in Dagon. If I'm being honest, this is like Nanami's best feat in the arc, and despite him being a GOAT, he kinda sucks in Shibuya, bro. Like, the greatest thing besides landing a chicken nugget blow on Dagon is beating up a femboy. Whereas Yuji, even before his fight with Mahito, was low-key the superior one between himself and Megumi when combating Awasaka. He managed to fight and almost beat Choso despite being caught off guard at the start and being weakened. And, of course, would then manage to land like a 20-piece combo on Mahito. So, yeah, I don't think it's ridiculous to say that Yuji is relative to Nanami at the beginning of the arc. And since I mentioned the Choso fight, we can talk about that as there are some specifics that I need to get into. You see, Yuji, despite being hit with an off-guard piercing blood, was stated to have a 50-50 chance of dodging it, and we know that the piercing blood move is unquantifiably faster than the speed of sound. I know some of you are about to start fuming at me saying this nerd shit, but there are calculations that do suggest that this move actually moves around 1.5 times the speed of sound at best. Which is why I would have Yuji between, like, above Mach 1 and below piercing blood, so, like, Mach 1.3. Which, funnily enough, there actually is a calculation of Yuji weaving the piercing blood in the manga, with him needing to move at Mach 1.33 to evade the minimum distance that was between his head and the piercing blood. So, I mean, hey, I'm actually not that far off here. And we do actually have a reference for Yuji's speed. You see in chapter 1, he can run the 50-meter dash in 3 seconds, which would mean he would have to be moving at least at 16 meters per second. And for reference, Mach 1.33 would be at least over 377 meters per second. So even when lowballing Yuji's speed, we can assert that he got over 23.5 times faster than where he started at in the series. I know this comes off super random, but I just wanted to give you guys a rough estimation for the 5 nerds who would care in the comments, so there you go. Anywho, as we know, Yuji would barely manage to survive the Choso fight and would come across his greatest enemy once again, Mahito. And he starts off with a very friendly introduction. And Mahito is such a nice guy, he just welcomes Itadori by murdering his mentor in front of his very eyes. This leads into Yuji going into a rage and damn near breaking down mentally, but ultimately he holds himself together to avenge Nanami. And then one of his closest comrades, that being Nobara, proceeds to get naded on by Mahito. Yuji would then be saved by none other than Aoi Todo, who helps him push forward, and through an empathetic black flash from Todo and Yuji then awakening his resolve, all 3 fighters would draw out 120% of their true potential. Though, due to Yuji taking prior damage from both Mahito and Choso, Yuji should be overall weakened here, so technically he's not at full power. But despite this, Yuji can fight Mahito pretty comfortably, and this is the same guy who was causing tremors around Shibuya's train station with body repel. And based on the raw energy of this alone, Mahito would need to be producing over 2 kilotons of energy, or enough energy to wipe out small towns. And of course, we see that Yuji can harm Mahito even at 120% of his true potential, and even going through an awakening. Though, to be fair to Yuji, we do know Mahito is superior to him, and he did need Todo's fake out boogie woogie to land that final blow on that newly reborn Mahito. But the point still stands that Yuji, by the end of Shibuya, is on a completely different level. Now, by this point, we're moving towards manga territory, so for those who haven't read anything JJK related, prepare to be spoiled. Anywho, Choso and Yuji help clean up the streets of Shibuya, and we see Choso noticing how much stronger Yuji has gotten. This is important to note considering Yuji not only fought Choso but also Mahito, which would be 2 instances of him growing a lot stronger. We then, of course, see him encounter Yuta Akotsu and Naoya, where he does his best. Like, he gets speed blitzed by Naoya and he kind of gets mogged on by Yuta. But we do know that Yuji wasn't trying to kill either one of them because Yuji doesn't try and kill humans. And if I'm being honest, past this point and throughout basically all of the Culling games, he doesn't really have a fight where he grows that much stronger. The only other fight he participates in before engaging in the final fight in the Culling games is against Higuruma, where he is specifically nerfed and restricted of his moves. Unless we think, of course, Helicopter Head pushed Yuji to a new level, I don't think we can say Yuji got all that much stronger since the end of Shibuya. Meaning, by this point, Yuji should still just be below Mahito, but of course, all of that changes once Sukuna would somehow manage to exit Yuji's body and then take Megumi's body. And it doesn't help either that right after this, Yuji is just like having a borderline mental breakdown and there is no Nanami, no Nobara, or Todo to go and help him. There's no Gojo as well, that boy is sealed. The only one who can stop Sukuna by this point is Yuji himself. And so we see a rage awaken within Yuji Itadori, allowing him to close the gap between himself and a weakened Sukuna, who by this point can't even cut Yuji properly with cleave. Now, it is safe to say that Sukuna was nerfed by this point, however his physical stats were noted to not be nerfed. So the fact still stands that Yuji pretty much went from a sub 15 finger level fighter, and actually a Mahito victim, to someone who can physically oppose Sukuna and even tag team with the likes of Maki, who, mind you, had just reached the level equal to Toji Zenin. Now, granted, when the three are fighting, it's clear that Itadori is the weakest by this point. However, he is not that far off with the likes of Maki and Sukuna. And mind you, this is the same Maki who is far faster than Curse Naoya, who is far faster than Base Naoya, who is far faster than Post-Shibuya Yuji. And based on calculations of Maki evading Curse Naoya, she would have to be moving at nearly at Mach 6 or specifically Mach 5.96 to be evading him. Meaning Yuji by this point would scale around here roughly, implying he got over 4.4 times faster between his fight with Choso and his fight with Meguna. Now, we know by this point his attack potency is definitely higher as well, but I'm not going to sit here and say he scales to domain expansions, which are specific buffs, or things like Jogo's Meteor, because if I'm being honest, I don't think you can prove Yuji is just going to sit here and tank it to the face. He just doesn't really have the facilities to deal with those kind of techniques or threats yet. And notice how I said yet. You see, after the fight with Meguna, Yuji would prepare for the final battle where he would just get a bunch of upgrades. Even if Gojo could potentially win, he himself needs to make sure that he does what he can to put down the one threat that put him on this entire journey in the first place. Yuji was responsible for eating the finger, and he wants to deal with the repercussions of that and save his friend. During this time, he'd learned the art of blood manipulation thanks to Choso, reverse curse technique, which allows him to regenerate from attacks, and simple domain, which allows him to counter domain expansions. And now I guess is probably a better time than any to mention his other abilities that I didn't really mention all that much throughout the video, just because Yuji has like 2 abilities to mention. He has the Divergent Fist that allows him to pretty much delay his hits and land an extra blow on his opponent. And Black Flash, which of course I already explained earlier, allows Yuji to awaken into the flow state and exponentially grow momentarily during battle. He also does have knowledge of martial arts and has a mastery of hand-to-hand combat. Yuji also gained access to these specific gauntlets that are durable enough to withstand his blows, which should speak to their durability. And we do know that he actually gets access to Sukuna's techniques as well, but we're not going to see that until later on. We're not going to really see Yuji use any of this because Gojo surely got this fight against Sukuna, right? But don't worry guys, Kashimo got a new technique and Yuji, please help us! Yuji, of course, would inevitably engage with Sukuna in Shijuku, and I am not going to lie to you guys, initially, Sukuna was kind of trolling him the whole time. Though, despite Sukuna not taking him seriously, he would be punished for this, as Yuji's punches would manage to weaken Sukuna's soul every single time he landed a blow. And we actually see Yuji, despite taking damage from Sukuna's attacks, he would manage to actually endure a lot of the damage with his gauntlets. Meaning that these gauntlets are probably more durable than Yuji himself. Then, of course, this same Yuji would then go on to combo with Yuta, with him visibly having less damage when they're taking the same attack, and Yuji as well was able to evade a lot of Yuta's moves when comboing with Sukuna. Now, I do think Yuta with his skill set should overwhelm a pre-shrine Yuji, but this is mainly due to his hacks and versatility. If Yuji were to get in close and engage with Yuta in pure hands alone, I do not see Yuta winning even with Rika at his disposal. We see him being physically inferior to the likes of Ishigori, who, mind you, didn't even get cleaved the same way Yuji did when he tried approaching Sukuna. Now, granted, Ryu is still more durable than the both of them, but Yuji would physically be closer to Ryu than Yuta and Rika. At the very worst, Yuta and him are going blow for blow, with Yuta having the technique and range advantage. By this point, I cannot sit here and say that Yuji is not a special grade fighter yet. Now, okay, there is the notorious statement from Kenjaku saying that, oh, well, you need to be able to wipe out a nation in order to be registered as special grade. And due to Yuji being a one-on-one type fighter, by definition, he wouldn't be able to qualify for special grade. However, he scales to characters and could possibly even beat the same guys who qualify for special grade. Like, if I'm being honest, this man can probably run a gauntlet on a nation himself and come out on top. And if you didn't think he was special grade level by this point, then wait till you see what happens next. Yuji eventually gets Sukuna into a one-on-one, where we would see him immediately go for the Black Flash. We'd then be told by the narrator with his Black Flashes that Yuji, along with his potential, is even rivaling Sukuna by this point. And we would see Yuji landing blows on Sukuna, and the more blows he would land on him, the more powerful he would become. Now, Sukuna's soul would also be getting weaker by this point, but we do see the narrator stating that Yuji is awakened, meaning even if you think Sukuna is nerfed, Yuji is exponentially stronger than before. The same Yuji who was already physically portrayed to be relatively above Yuta. Which, I'm not gonna lie, would mean to me at least, by this point, this dude in a one-on-one is slamming anyone that isn't Gojo or Sukuna, if I'm being honest. Ah, well, Yuta and Gojo's body! Man, shut up, that don't count. And, of course, Yuji would add the final touch by showing off what he had last learned before Shinjuku, that being domain expansion. Now, due to Yuji having a domain expansion finally, we can say that Yuji could actually scale to the cursed energy construction feats shown previously within the verse, like Jogo creating a mountain or Dagon creating a small island. I think you guys know where I'm going with this. Pretty much, Yuji is able to use the domain expansion with Sukuna's techniques, and he should be superior to the likes of Jogo in a domain-to-domain clash, who obviously can construct a mountain within his domain, and Dagon's domain size is calculated to be around mountain level anyway. So to say that Yuji Itadori with his domain expansion could potentially be mountain level isn't ridiculous. However, this is only through cursed energy construction and not actual feats shown in the verse. And I mean, scaling Yuji's domain is very vague anyway, because the only thing we really see within his domain is that he gets the slash attacks he threw before, but now they're sure hits and it also affects your soul. But with this domain, I still believe it's enough to say that Yuji should obviously upscale from Dagon and Jogo, who are both around mountain level. But realistically, with Yuji's normal stats at his peak, he's probably fighting threats comfortably in that town to low end city level range. And as for his speed, due to him being relative to a weakened Sukuna who managed to weave Choso's piercing blood at close range and even blitz it, this should mean Yuji is significantly faster compared to his old self. But I don't really think we can say he got all that much faster or quantify it, since we can't scale Yuji to full power Sukuna as he is significantly weakened when they fight. I don't think Yuji got like a blitz level difference faster than the likes of Maki, so he should probably be around the same speed he is before Shinjuku. But I know there's gonna be that one guy in the comments, well, I mean, Tylearn, he should be faster. Then just cap him at like Mach 6, bro. I don't know what to tell you. Anywho, after Yuji domains and aura forms on Sukuna after being humiliated the whole manga, bro exercised that bastard once and for all, and bro would finally go on to live till old age. And due to the JJK sequel now being released, hopefully old Yuji comes back and does some Giga Chad stuff, because if that's the case, then I will definitely be back on this. But anyway, that is my analysis on Yuji Itadori. This man is a beast by the end of his manga for sure, and he is definitely special grade level. Anywho, go ahead and check out my analysis on the new manga and follow me on TikTok.